The Global Biodiversity Crisis, A Story About Decline of Birds in North America by Taylor Price, Josh, Natalie Abir, Mallory, and Sylvey. What is the biodiversity crisis? Biodiversity crisis is the rapid decline of life on Earth due to human activities like habitat destruction, pollution, climate change, etc. What are the patterns of loss? Species extinction, population decline, and trophic cascade. Where is it happening? Biodiversity is a global issue, but it's most severe in some areas. Tropical rainforests, coral reefs, freshwater ecosystems, islands.
The factors of the biodiversity loss of the avifauna include urbanization and habitat loss, which leads to reduced success in breeding, climate change, which can lead to birds relocating in overly dense populations in certain areas, and unregulated harvest, which leads to a loss of food.
Biodiversity loss results in habitat fragmentation, which is the breaking of large habitats into smaller and isolated areas. Habitat fragmentation reduces space available for wildlife, which limits their movement and access to resource. This limits their ability to find mates, leading to decreased genetic diversity. This is a concern because it makes populations more vulnerable to threats, indicating a higher risk of species extinction. Additionally, the effects on ecosystem function and services of biodiversity loss include the loss of keystone species. Species such as bees and other pollinators impact the ability of the ecosystem to produce enough food for the primary consumers, leading to a lower population of primary consumers and ultimately a lower population of secondary consumers as well. Finally, biodiversity loss can reduce resilience to climate change because diverse ecosystems are better equipped to adapt to changing environmental conditions.
The article addresses a few questions to help show the objectives of this study. Some of the questions we came up with include: how do we assess the population changes? What is the extent of the population declines? What causes these declines? And how has this decline further affected biodiversity for not only birds but other animals as well? For collecting data, researchers used a combination of different data collecting methods. First, they used breeding bird and species surveys. This included collecting data on many different bird species which ranged throughout a few decades. Secondly, they used a weather radar called NexRad. This helped track the mass of migrating birds. The last method they used was taxonomic and ecological grouping. This helped identify different trends throughout the different species.
The first key finding is about net population change in North American birds. This figure shows the estimates of 529 species throughout North America. Since 1970, there has been a net loss of 2.9 billion breeding birds, which is shown in the gray and red lines. The map represents the different breeding biomes across North America.
Our second key finding are the patterns in nocturnal bird migration. Data has shown that there's been a steep decline in nocturnal bird migration since 2007. There's no consistent trend in central or Pacific regions of the United States, and there's a consistent decline in areas with the highest loss in biomass passage. This figure shows the overall trend in nocturnal bird migration and how it correlates with the biomass passage loss throughout the country. As you can see, there's the highest loss towards the East Coast, and there isn't much loss towards the West Coast.
The third key finding is about gains and losses across the North American birds. The red figure shows the net loss of different types of birds across America since 1970, while the purple figure shows the net gain of different types of birds across America. In total, there was a 3.2 billion net loss between all of these species, and there was a net gain of only 250 million. This explains how in total there was a net loss of 2.9 billion, and the net loss was way greater between these species.
How to address this issue. For avifauna, specifically, habitat conservation is very important. We can establish protected areas for regions deemed critical for bird mating and migration. We can also create wildlife corridors to connect fragmented habitats. For other taxa, we can promote sustainable agriculture practices like reduced pesticide use, agroforestry, and crop rotation. We can also protect habitats and restore degraded ones through reforestation and wetland restoration.